Welcome to Road to Recovery.
Hello and welcome to Road to Recovery, advocacy and insights for trucking accidents with Sagi Shaked. I'm Kevin Rosenquist. Thanks for being here. Sagi is founder of Shaked Law Personal Injury Lawyers and is ranked as one of the top 100 trial lawyers in the United States by the American Trial Lawyers Association, with a wealth of experience in personal injury, wrongful death, and complex litigation cases. He passionately advocates for victims and has recovered multi-million-dollar settlements and damages for his clients. Sagi, great to see you.
Hey, Kevin. Good seeing you as well. Look forward to this episode.
Yeah, so like we all know, losing a loved one, is devastating. Losing one in a trucking accident is tough. The legal journey can be pretty overwhelming. So in this episode, we're going to cover the key things families should know if they're pursuing a wrongful death case. So let's start with defining who can file a wrongful death lawsuit after a truck accident.
Yeah, and that's a very good question because every state is different on who can file the claim. So I'll speak for this episode specifically on Florida. So in Florida, when a wrongful death happens, an estate has to be open, and that goes through the probate court. And then the Florida statute defines who can bring these claims. So it's a little tricky. So we'll start off first. If the person was married, then their spouse can bring the claim, and their children under the age of 25 can bring the claim. If the person was not married, then children of any age can bring the claim. So let's say you have someone who's 80 years old, and children who are, in their 50s, I call them children, but they're really adults, right?
Yeah.
Adults in their 50s can bring their claim. But if the person's married, then only children under the age of 25. Now, let's say there are no children, right? The person is 50 years old, there's no children, and dies in a car crash or truck crash, because the law is different in medical malpractice. So I don't want people to get confused. So if the person's older, let's say they're 50 years old and they pass away with no children and are not married, then that person's parents can bring a claim for the loss of their loved one. So usually you won't see siblings in Florida. It's either goes up, right? So it's parents up, or down, children, or sideways, your spouse. So it's spouse and children. And if you're married, then your parents cannot recover unless you're under the age of 25. So if you have someone who got married very early, let's say under the age of 25, their spouse could recover, their kids could recover, their parents could recover. But if they're over 25, then it would just be the spouse and the kids. So hopefully I didn't confuse anybody here.
No, I think that's clear.
Yeah.
And nothing else past that. Like if none of those factors are involved, then nobody can.
Right, unless there's one more, like if you adopted someone and you take care of that person, that person would be eligible. Now you could also, if there's someone who's special needs and you take care of them and you can show it on your tax returns and that kind of stuff, then that person would also be eligible under the Florida wrongful death statute.
Okay. What types of compensation can families seek in a wrongful death case?
Yeah, so again, in terms of compensation, every state is different. For example, let's use New York real quick and compare it to Florida. In New York, the family cannot get money for the loss of a loved one. They would only get money for that pre-death pain and suffering, that time period right before that person dies, whether it's a minute or 10 seconds. But they don't get for the loss of a loved one, like the loss of companionship. So Florida, that's completely different. In Florida, the spouse can recover the loss of companionship that the spouse had with the person who passed away. If it was a child, the loss of guidance, support, companionship, those are things that instruction, those are things that a child would be able to recover. So it's just different depending on who the survivor is. You can also recover the medical bills. And then in wrongful death cases in Florida, again, they have something called net accumulations. So not what you made on a gross basis. When I say gross, I mean your gross salary. So if you made $100,000 a year or $50,000 a year, they're not going to give you that number. They give the net accumulations. What is the net after spending expenses? It's a little bit more complicated than that, but it'll take me about a half hour to explain. So just for brevity's purposes, I just give you the quick synopsis. So medical bills, future lost wages that the victim would have earned, and then loss of companionship for the wife, for the children, loss of instruction, guidance, and love. an affection for the children and for the spouse. So those are the general types of areas that a family member can recover if they have to go through an unfortunate event. We had one in our family where we had a family member, cousin, that passed away on a motorcycle accident. So we kind of know firsthand what other family members are going through.
Yeah, it's devastating. Is it hard to prove negligence or fault in a wrongful death truck accident case? I mean, how do you go about that?
Yeah, so generally it just depends on how the negligent acts occurred, meaning they usually say liability, meaning who's at fault. So it's always tricky when you have a truck, unless it's, for example, like a rear ender, but generally when there's a T-bone, so where you would see something like this, that it would make a T, right? One car smashes into the other at an intersection, let's say. It always becomes a he said, she said. That's why getting to the scene is important, getting the accident reconstruction expert involved, getting the logbooks to figure out how long was that truck driver on the road, bills of lading, getting that black box data recorder. There's things that need to get done immediately. So if you have one of these cases, you want to make sure the lawyer is doing everything possible to get all of the evidence immediately and not just sitting back and waiting, because if they're waiting, they're not doing their job. They have to aggressively be looking to get the evidence. Again, logbooks, the preservation letter needs to go out, and our preservation usually has like 60 things that we request. The black box data recorder download you want to do. If the truck driver has a cell phone, which 100% of them do, we want to do a download on their cell phone, because you never know what that cell phone is going to show. So you can subpoena the cell phone carrier, and that'll tell you if the person was on the phone with a phone call or texting at that moment. But they won't tell you if that person was surfing the internet, on Facebook, on social, Instagram, Snapchat, whatever they could be on. That's why we have an expert involved, and that expert can come in there and get a download of the cell phone. So those are the kinds of things that we look for to determine liability or to determine negligence. We have to get all that stuff in place, and it makes these cases a little bit more difficult because there are federal regulations involved when dealing with a truck, as opposed to a person like myself or like you, Kevin, who just drives cars for a living, from and to and back from work.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. That's a lot of stuff that you have to try to grab. The cell phone stuff is really interesting. I mean, that could tell a story for sure.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's interesting what you can get on that download and what people are doing while they're driving. You wouldn't believe it.
Yeah.
You wouldn't believe it.
I would, but I also would probably be shocked at some of the craziness. I'm sure of it. You're going to get on me about my timeline questions, but how long does a wrongful death lawsuit take? Is it longer than a standard accident?
Yeah, and I can speak about my office. So as soon as we get a wrongful death case involving a truck, we'll immediately file a lawsuit. I'll tell you why, because insurance companies are never going to offer you fair money in pre-suit. They're always going to try to lowball. And if you wait around 6 months to file your lawsuit on a wrongful death case, there's no point in doing that. Just go off, file the lawsuit within the first week or two, get running on that case so you can get that case resolved in 12 to 18 months. With no pressure on the insurance company of a trial, they do not settle these cases for a fair amount. And why do I say a trial? Because they're scared of people coming from the community, listening and hearing the evidence. And you can see by the verdicts that are going across the country, people are mad. They're mad that people are dying on the roadways, especially from these trucking companies or from other people in general. They shouldn't be. If you're a little bit responsible, these types of crashes don't occur. And so it can take a little bit of time. With trucking cases dealing with wrongful death, we try to push them as fast as possible, get them into litigation right away, and try to get them resolved. One, I don't want to leave that chapter in that book for the family open too long, but it can take, again, 12 to 18 months is what I would say if there's no appeal to get the case resolved.
Wow. Yeah. You mentioned closing that chapter of that horrible chapter of a family's book. What kind of emotional and financial challenges do families face during this process, and how can a lawsuit help?
Yeah, the emotional and financial hardships that come from, one of these trucking collisions leading to a wrongful death are horrific, especially in the emotional side. One can just imagine, or no one wants to imagine, but I see it a lot with my clients. It's really hard for them, rightfully so, going through these events, whether it was a parent or a child or a sibling. It's hard for everyone involved. And then you have the hardships of financial. What if that was the breadwinner? How do they pay for anything? We've had that situation where it was the the husband and father that unfortunately passed away, and they didn't have savings because it was already tough times. And now you have someone who passed away, not because of their negligence, but because someone else's negligence. So how do you go about making sure that, they're dealing with their financial hardships? On top of that, they have their emotional hardships. So we try to get them help from a psychological standpoint. And then from the financial standpoint, there are companies that will step up to the plate and help families in their time of need so they can wait it out the 12 to 18, 24 months that they need to get the case resolved. So there's a lot of companies that we work with that will help family members in that time of need. So that's kind of the answer.
I'm sure you've heard some pretty tough stories and been around some pretty emotional people throughout these processes.
It still gets hard no matter how many times we hear the different types of stories, because they're all so different and every family is so different, but their pain is kind of the same. You feel the pain that they're going through, and it's our job to communicate the human element of what they went through. It's not just another case, it's a human being. And we kind of like to bring that human being to life so the jury can see who this person was and what that person meant to this family.
Do you have I'm sure you have many, but can you give us a success story of a family you've helped in a wrongful death suit?
Yeah, absolutely. So we tried a wrongful death case. I'll tell you one that actually went to trial as opposed to just settling. So the case we tried was a wrongful death case that occurred in Arcadia, Florida, but the company that the truck driver was working for was based out in Orlando, which is in Orange County, Florida. We filed a lawsuit against them, and they were taking the position that the driver, he's not responsible, or the company's not responsible because they weren't on work schedule at the time. Well, he was traveling for an overnight stay only because the employer booked him overnight at a hotel. So he wasn't on the job at the moment, but he was traveling to a hotel that the employer wanted him to be at. And on his way to the hotel in a country road in Florida, in the middle of the state, in Central Florida, he's trying to overpass or take over 3 cars. And as he jumps to the left lane to pass these 3 cars, he's now driving against traffic, and he doesn't make it back in time and, slams into this vehicle occupied by mom and her child. The insurance company in that case didn't offer enough money that we thought was fair. And our clients were the 2 young children. One was 21 and one was 13. So they had gone to see the mom, and the 13-year-old had come back from a trip to go see the 21-year-old play football, college football he was playing. So when they got back home, they flew into Tampa and they were heading home. And the crash occurred when they were heading home. And, the child survived, and he had to see this awful thing on how his mother passed away. And it was, as anyone can imagine, extremely hard for him. And it was extremely hard for the 21-year-old son. We went to trial because the insurance company just didn't offer us enough money that we thought would be fair in light of that case. Even after the last witness testified, we tried to settle that case, and the insurance company still refused and lowballed us. And it wasn't until the jury came back with $12,240,000 that the insurance company realized, okay, now we have to pay. And believe it or not, the insurance company could have settled for a little less than that and gotten that case done, but they made the family go through a trial, which is hard enough. Yep. No family should have to go through that. So if they make a family go through that, the insurance company needs to pay, and they need to pay big money if that's what they make a family do. So that's a story that it was sad, but we did get the family money, and the child now is happy to report he's a grown young man, a good guy, and he has the money to help him take care of the emotional issues that he has, and the emotional care and treatment that he needs, and the psychological treatment that he needs, because it stays with the person for the rest of their life.
Right.
Just imagine every birthday, every Mother's Day, when other mothers gather around, he didn't get to see his mom. So those are types of things. So we were able to get justice for this family of 2 young boys who no longer have their mother.
No, it's a horrible story, but a good as you can be resolution. So thank you for sharing that, Sagi. And thank you for tuning in to Road to Recovery, Advocacy and Insights for Trucking Accidents with Sagi Shaked. If you have lost a loved one and need help navigating the legal process, you can connect with Sagi at shakedlaw.com. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe our channel. We love having you be part of our community. Sagi, thanks for sharing so much, and we'll chat again soon.
Thank you for having me, Kevin.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.